Hey everybody, and welcome to our early comics review video. I'm Andy.
I'm Matt.
We're here with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and this is our big show where we show you some of the biggest and best books that are releasing this week to your local comic book store, if that be Infinity Flux right here, or if you get your books at infinityflux.net. They are available for order right now and will be out on Wednesday in stores.
Yep.
So we got some great books this week. A lot of big books that aren't even like number ones.
Just really good
Just
books.
really good books. So let's get into it.
Yep.
Starting with one that we both read.
Yeah.
And we were both like pretty surprised by.
Yeah. So this is Aliens versus Avengers #1. This is written by Jonathan Hickman. The art is by Esad Ribic. And let me say, I really enjoyed this book. I thought this was really, really good, really interesting, really fun. I like Marvel. I like the Aliens franchise. I like them mashed together. And if you're a fan of both properties, I think you should read this because it's really good. With that said, what you see on the cover here is not what is in this book, okay? You do not get Captain America, Iron Man, and Captain Marvel fighting xenomorphs. So this actually gives me, this is set in the future, which I didn't know.
It definitely, when I started, I was like, oh, this is why it's a Hickman book.
Yeah.
It feels way more like a Hickman book once you start reading it.
Yeah, so this is set in the future, and it gives me vibes of maybe like Old Man Logan mixed with Avengers Twilight, if that tells you anything. So at the very beginning of the book, we see what look like some Shi'ar scientists. They are experimenting on the effects of facehuggers on different alien races. They mention Skrulls, and I think maybe they experiment on some Kree, stuff like that. Well, in comes this Wakandan space fleet, and we do see Black Panther, but Black Panther, T'Challa, is older.
Yeah,
and he
this
has a
is
son.
when I first was started trying to figure out what was going on.
Well, because two Black Panthers walk in, and this isn't a spoiler, it's at the very beginning. I was like, wait, why are there two?
Yeah.
And then one's a son, one's a father, and I was like, wait. So it was, I was trying to make it all click, right? So they stopped this experimentation by these rogue Shi'ar scientists, but it's too late because those scientists have already launched 4 probes to 4 different planets, Earth being one of them, and those probes contain xenomorph queen eggs. So we then get a montage of basically xenomorphs running rampant across Earth, and they basically decimate the planet. We don't see a lot of that because that's not what the story is. We just know that they mess up Earth real good. And so what we're left with is there's one city left standing because it was built
very like almost Judge Dredd.
Yeah,
like the mega cities.
Yeah, it does look like that, and it was made to withstand all these attacks. And there are some heroes there, but they are older versions of the heroes. And I won't spoil anything else, but basically what it's going to come down to is these older heroes trying to figure out what these xenomorphs even are and then how to stop them because they're pretty indestructible. They make a point, just like the movies do, of saying that this is the perfect organism, the perfect killing machine, that kind of thing. So yeah, these older versions of these heroes are going to have to figure out what do we do next. So this isn't this. I thought based on the cover, based on the solicitations, even I was like, oh man, xenomorphs are going to come to Earth and the Avengers are going to fight them. But that's not it. Like the Avengers.
This may have happened in the past.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out too well.
Right. Yeah, the Avengers kind of technically aren't in this, I guess. It is a group of heroes. They don't really refer to themselves as the Avengers. But it's still good.
Yeah.
It's still very good. I just want you to, the cover is a little misleading, but you still get a really good story in it.
Yeah, I would say is tonally completely different than what I thought it would be. Setting, tone, all of that.
It's kind of dark.
So it is pretty dark.
Yeah.
It's pretty that's when you said Old Man Logan, it's like, because it's kind of like, hey, that person you like, they went missing years ago and presumed dead and stuff. Yeah. So it's like that, but all that being said, it's a really enjoyable read.
It is good.
And it's what I like about it is it did kind of my expectations were one thing and it was something completely different.
Yeah.
And it was felt refreshing because I was like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I have
in
no
this.
idea. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect from one page to the next. So still very good, just not quite this right here. But so anyway, this is our A cover right there, and we got some cool variants. We have this John Tyler Christopher variant. We've got a
In space, no one can hear you scream assemble.
right. There's a Mark Brooks variant. This doesn't happen in the book, but there is something interesting with this. There's something very interesting with that. This is our Orzu variant. And then, of course, you got to have the Scotty Young variant, the cute Scotty Young variant, which that's just great. I would love it if this exact thing had happened. That would have been great.
It had that cover, but you opened it up and it was all Scotty Young, like
Yeah,
really
right,
goofy
yeah.
on the inside.
And then this is our 1 in 25 Daniel variant, Tony Daniel variant that we're selling for $29.99.
There's some surprise characters in it.
Yep.
There's what characters are important at this point in the story. I thought was really interesting and surprising.
Right.
To follow, maybe not the most main characters that you would expect. And I thought that was also refreshing.
Yeah, so even though I was surprised about what this book actually is, it was a good surprise. It was a pleasant surprise. Yeah.
It was just a little weird advertising.
Right, right.
First up for me is actually number 3. This is X-Men number 3. And my first note says best issue yet.
It's good.
It's
which
really
is
saying something because I feel like I really like the first issue. I really like the second issue. This one is competing with the second issue, but I feel like this one really gets more into the kind of state of the mutants currently.
Mm-hmm.
So in this, it kind of is two things going on. One, Cyclops is going to meet at just a diner in a local town with someone named Agent Lundquist, who you can see on the cover. It's this guy right here. He's a pretty intimidating guy.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a battle of wits as, he doesn't like the mutants being there. He doesn't like what Cyclops is doing. But Cyclops also has some pretty strong arguments for the fact that they have to find out kind of how they acquired their new base. And let's say this is not the passive Cyclops past. This is a Cyclops who is ready to throw down if that so happens to be what needs to be done. Lundquist is upset about what happened in the previous issue in X-Men number 2, and is not too happy because they've kind of learned that they're just as confused as Cyclops and the rest of the mutants are about why some adults are getting mutant abilities, further on in life when they're supposed to. And doesn't like, the military just doesn't like the idea that there's stuff they can't control.
Right, yeah.
And don't like that the X-Men are stepping in to do this. While all that is going on, there is a kind of cloaked attack on the X-Men's base by kind of big equipped soldiers who have cloaking for, like, they're invisible, but also psychic cloaking.
Yeah.
So
I think they're Lundquist's soldiers, right?
Yeah. They're kind of his goons. So it's up to, Magic, Juggernaut, Kid Omega, everyone who's still there to figure out a way, how do we find these people and take them out? And you see really creative ways that the X-Men, you can't just mentally find them because they're cloaked there.
Yeah.
You can't see them. So they do, and Magic has a cool thing that she's like, well, maybe there's a way I can see them.
Yeah, and Temper has a really great moment too.
Temper, who I'm not super familiar with.
Yeah, me neither.
But there is a great moment, about 2 great moments.
2, yeah.
And something interesting with Magneto. This is just, it's really building itself up to be this being the premier X book.
Yeah.
Coming out.
This is my favorite of the From the Ashes books, especially after this issue. This is my favorite new X-Men title, and this issue in particular was definitely, of all the stuff we read this weekend, this issue was my favorite. This was awesome.
Yeah, this is in my probably top 3 of current Marvel favorite books, along with Ultimate Spider-Man and something else. But if you're not reading X-Men right now, or maybe you've got a little burn during the Krakoan era stuff or whatever, I feel like this is the X book to get into. This feels the most like kind of post uh, giant sized X-Men. You know, this is a team that have a lot of good personal moments, but a
Yeah.
lot of good action. Ryan Stegman's art in this is fantastic. It's just overall, I feel like, you know, top
Yeah.
notch comic book.
And when the conversation between Cyclops and Lundquist, goes back and forth between the two subplots, and Cyclops just delivers some cold-blooded lines, like he's got ice in his veins,
Yeah.
or does he? Because there is a little something there,
Which
but
made me feel a little bit more like maybe some classic X-Men stuff where some characters do show some more inner stuff. We're seeing them as human also.
yeah. But Cyclops, you can tell he wants to do good, but he's also had enough with
Yeah.
the U.S. and the government. And if they go along with him, then cool, everything's great. But if they don't, then there's gonna be some stuff going down. And he
Let's just say his wife's in space, but she's a quick phone call
yeah,
away.
yeah. So he delivers. That was my first. I was like, man, this guy is cold blooded, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and I love Cyclops, and this is a great kind of redemption for Cyclops
This is
for a lot that he's been through
yeah,
previously. This is like, oh, this is why he's the leader.
yeah.
So, just
It
fantastic
was
issue of
awesome.
X-Men.
It was awesome. It was so good.
We've got some great covers. We've got the J. Scott Campbell Rogue variant. He's doing some great ones. There's a great Emma Frost one coming up. So many good ones. We have this anniversary Joel Jones cover, which is a homage to All Winners number 19. You know, that famous cover everyone knows.
Yeah.
It's kind of back from the Invaders time with Human Torch and Namor and Captain America.
Yeah.
We also have, this one is great. This is the Asrar cover. I would love to see him on a ongoing X book because I love his art. And lastly, we have a 1 in 25 Greg Land variant that we're selling for $24.99. Psylocke is also great in this issue.
Yep. And there's a bit in this where where Cyclops is on the phone with Rogue, and they mention something that
is going to be an issue 2.
Is going to be an issue 2 of Uncanny X-Men,
Yeah.
but that's not out yet. So
it says like to see the other side of this conversation.
Yeah.
So that'll be really cool to see and maybe like piece them together
Yeah.
to what the full conversation
But it made me
is.
really interested. I mean, I like the first issue of Uncanny X-Men, but that made me interested. It's like, wow, I really can't wait for the next issue of that to see what's going on over there. Because it seemed like Rogue and Cyclops are having some disagreements about how to handle a few things.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, so the next for me is the Marvel 85th Anniversary Special. This is a one-shot, and just celebrating 85 years of Marvel Comics. Now, this is an anthology book that tells 5 different stories, but they're all connected by an overarching story. So the main story in this is written by Ryan North, and the art is by Joshua Cassara. It's set in the 85th century on this like floating kind of space station looking thing called the Museum of Heroism. And inside, it's like a museum, and it's got all these different artifacts of heroes from current day Marvel. And there's this tour guide that's leading a group of tourists around, and he's telling. And there's also a couple of other in that group of tourists. There's a couple of characters who we do know from current day.
Maybe there's a reason they can maybe live to that.
Right? Yeah. There's a reason why they're still there. And this tour guide is telling these different stories of these different heroes, but there's something a little bit strange about some of the stories he's telling. There's a little bit more to the tour guide there. But then it's because of these artifacts and these stories that he's telling, that's why we get these different stories. And there's 5 different ones. There's one called The Herald of Tomorrow, where Kamala Khan is the Herald of Galactus.
I actually thought this was really interesting.
It was really good, and it's written by Iman Vellani and Samir Pirzada, and then Stephen Byrne does the art, and that was really cool to see.
Now, there's something she does with her powers. Have we seen that in current?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
It's a little bit more in line with the MCU powers.
Right, yeah. So yeah, it's cool to see Kamala Khan. Now, obviously, that takes place a little bit in the future from where we are now in current Marvel Comics, because she's an adult, and then the adult heroes now are even older. There's another story written and drawn by Alan Davis that features the classic '90s Excalibur team.
It just looks like a missing Excalibur
Yeah,
story.
yeah, and they're living in the lighthouse, and they think that it's haunted, and there's reasons for that. There is a really cool Spider-Man story called Rush Hour, written by Christopher Priest, and Carlo Paguilian is the artist. It's set shortly after the death of Gwen Stacy, and Peter Parker has a tight deadline with the Bugle, but he needs to do something for his Aunt May. Tries to get back to the assignment, but Spider-Man being Spider-Man, something's going to get in the way of that. There's a really interesting story called The Moon Warrior, written and drawn by Yuji Kanu. And it's set during World War II, centered around the Japan branch of Hydra, but it features what I think is a Japanese Moon Knight. I'm sorry to say that I didn't quite understand that story, but it's done in this really cool manga style.
It looks like old school manga. Even
Yeah.
the paper is like a different color.
Yeah.
It's got some very classic manga feel to it. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. And then there's the last story is called The Contest of Champions, written and drawn by Steve Scrose. And this one is set in the future of current day Marvel, but still way in the past from the 85th century. And it's about these clones of Earth's heroes who are made to fight in this gladiatorial arena, but they still retain some of the memories of the heroes they were cloned from. And it's cool because one of them goes like, "Wait, where am I? How did I get here?" And they don't know what's going on. And there's actually some kind of brutal, like violent imagery in that one. And it's just creepy that they have some of the memories, but they don't quite know what's going on. And it's just really cool. So all of those 5 stories being told to this group of tourists aboard this museum space station looking thing. And of course, but that main story has a little bit more to it as well. So just a cool, anthology book of, some different Marvel stories featuring different heroes set in different points in time. So yeah, it's really cool if you want to check that out. So that's our A cover right there, and then we have one really cool Scotty Young wraparound cover, which I believe is all the big Marvels variants, but just like put together in a big collage. So that's really neat.
Big glob of characters.
Yep.
Okay, next up, a new #1 that I really like. This is Universal Monsters Frankenstein #1. This is our third of the Universal Monsters. We had Dracula, then Creature from the Black Lagoon, and now Frankenstein. This one is done by Michael Walsh, who you may know from Silver Coin. Fantastic writer and artist. And I feel like this one might be my favorite of the first issues out of any of them, because this almost feels like an issue of Silver Coin. So this first issue of this is called Hands of a Father. And we actually see a young boy who just lost his father. He's at his grave, but runs off when he hears someone coming, and it turns out it is Victor Frankenstein with Fritz. His name is not Igor originally. His name is Fritz. And they're digging up the body to use as parts for their monster. And the boy, being curious and being, still attached to his dad and seeing his dad's body taken away, stows aboard their carriage, and then was able to sneak into the castle and discovers there what is going on. And you can imagine, with a title like that and everything, this focuses around his father's hands that are used for the monster. And I don't want to give away too much, but it is a great kind of one and done story. And I believe each of these issues is going to focus on a different body part of the Frankenstein monster and what kind of a little bit of the backstory of it. But also, that kid may appear in more issues. I'm not sure, because it's kind of seems like they're starting something there. But this was awesome. The art really complemented the story. It's very moody. You see some of the classic scenes from the movie, kind of the "It's Alive" scene.
Oh yeah.
But from the boy's perspective,
Nice.
It's just really, really cool. So if you like, I would even say horror anthology, it has a lot of that feel to it, but also you're getting the kind of name brand Universal Monsters Frankenstein in there as well. It's really, really good. So I highly recommend this one, Universal Monsters Frankenstein issue 1. And we've got, of course, some great covers for this. So we've got, here we have a Middleton variant. It's very classic. We've got, of course, a blank sketch version, build your own monster on the cover. We've got a 1 in 10 Francavilla variant. How perfect is that?
Francavilla doing horror
Monster.
stuff. Yeah, it's great.
We're selling for $12.99, and then we have a 1 in 25 Middleton black and white variant. That we're selling for $19.99.
All right, well, sticking with the anniversary specials, we have the 0 Hour 30th anniversary special here. Now, full transparency, the box containing this did not arrive at our store until earlier today.
Yep.
So we actually did not have the chance to read this fully, but both of us flipped through this. We read, about 10 of the first pages, the first 10 pages or whatever, just to try to understand what this is. But I can't give you a full rundown of the story because we just did not have time to read it. But this is a big square bound book. This is set back during the events of 0 Hour. This is very Kyle Rayner heavy. Where Kyle Rayner is still the Green Lantern, so Kyle fans, you're
The only Green Lantern.
right. So yeah, Kyle Rayner fans, you're definitely going to want to pick this up. It's very action packed. It's done by a lot of different artists, and I believe are there different writers as well? It's on the inside.
I believe so.
Um,
yeah, there is.
So it's kind of like a love letter, almost like a lost chapter of 0 Hour. We've got some Hal Jordan parallax in there, and we have some other heroes that maybe we haven't seen since this era. But it's just a nice callback to 0 Hour because this is the 30th anniversary. So yeah, if you're a fan of that era, if you're a fan of Kyle Rayner or maybe Hal Jordan's parallax, definitely pick this up. Because I think it's, like I said, it's very, very action packed. I want to hurry up and read the rest of it, and there's just some cool stuff in here. So there's our A cover right there, which is a wraparound.
Yeah, you've got like Connor Hawk.
Yep, Connor Hawk, Green Arrow. Yeah, that's our A cover. We have this really nice Alan Qua cover right there.
They're all competing on how many characters they can fit on it.
Well, not Ken Lashley. He's only doing Kyle Rayner, but that one is
him,
super cool. And then this is the John Bogdano and Alex Sinclair with Hal Jordan's parallax, and his choices weigh in on him, I guess. And this is actually a little bit not holographic, but there's a gloss or a sheen to it. It's not acetate or anything, but I don't think. But yeah, this is a nice slick cover there. So yeah, sorry that we couldn't give you the full rundown. This did not arrive until very later in the day today, but it still looks awesome.
Yeah. Next up for me, another X book. It's NYX number 2. So this is interesting. Issue 1 of NYX really followed like Kamala Khan and Sophie Cuckoo and what's going on there. And Laura Kinney, Wolverine, showed up maybe for like a page and a half.
Yeah.
But she seemed very intense in those pages.
She was doing she was in the middle of something, and I feel like this issue is what she was doing in that.
Yes, because this is all Wolverine issue, and it is really, really cool. I probably like this one better than the first one. I had to read parts of this slowly or reread it to really understand kind of what her plan was and all of that. Yeah. But I feel like that's also going to be fleshed out as we go forward. So in this one, Laura Kinney is investigating a mysterious figure named Mr. Friend. And this is someone that I think she initially thinks is kidnapping mutants, but when she runs into another mutant who is, she's like, oh, stop, don't take her or whatever. The mutant's like, no, I want to go.
Yeah.
This Mr. Friend person has like a haven for young mutants, and it's actually really good. But of course, Wolverine, she's a little like, I'm going to look into this a little bit further. So she kind of goes undercover into this, I don't even know how you would describe it, kind of a gang club type thing where there are a lot of young mutants and they do seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But it is led by a mutant named Local. And he has a very unique power. I don't even fully understand it, but he seems to be able to manipulate things in a city.
It gave me vibes of City Boy from DC, yeah.
And so she's going to end up working with him to, he's kind of like the second in charge to this Mr. Friend, and she has to work with Local to get a presence with Mr. Friend.
Well, she has to go through a series of tests.
Yeah.
And obviously she nails them.
Yeah, but they're maybe not the most legal things.
Sure.
Yeah. Part of it seems like, they're like taking down the anti-mutant establishment, but some of them are kind of like hey, we've got to steal some stuff for our club and
Yeah.
everything. So some weird stuff's going on there, and then by the end, it is revealed who this Mr. Friend character is, and I won't say anymore, but it's
I wasn't expecting it.
no, it
Nope.
goes from like, oh, this is pretty like, interesting street level stuff to much bigger.
Yeah.
So I really like this issue, and it feels almost like a completely different book than issue one
Yeah.
of this.
But I do feel like the story of the first one and the story of this one are eventually going to converge together.
Yeah.
You know.
I think maybe the school from the first one is in this one,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But a great issue, and especially if you're a Laura Kinney Wolverine fan, this is some of her best stuff. And a lot of homages back to the original NYX series, even what she was wearing, her more street clothes, a little bit more, street level story is in this. So, really cool issue. That is our A cover. And we only have one variant left for this. We have this wolf variant.
Well, next up for me is the Incredible Hulk Annual, which is part 6 of the Infinity Watch story. But I will say that this is my favorite part so far, hands down. This is written by Derek Landy and the art is by Jeff Shaw. And you could read this on its own, even if you haven't been reading the Infinity Watch story, but you're a Hulk fan, you could absolutely read this on its own, no worries. So, the bearer of the Mind Stone, which is a character named World Mind, who I think maybe this is their first appearance, I'm not too sure on that, but he actually summons Colleen Wing to Oregon to be his bodyguard of sorts. But much to her surprise, he wants her help defeating Thanos. And she's like, oh, what do you think I'm going to do against Thanos? Thanos has tracked him down because he is the one who is fused with the Mind Stone, and Thanos wants it. And it's funny because Colleen Wing does about as well as you would expect her to against Thanos. But the Mind Stone has also reached out to somebody else as well, that being the Hulk. And all of that happens in just the first 2, 3, 4 pages. And the rest of the issue is a knockdown, drag out slugfest between the Hulk and Thanos in the forests of Oregon. They're knocking down trees, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And it is extremely action packed, and the art is great. They're big and they're bulky, and they're just slugging it out with each other. And I won't spoil how it all shakes out, but the ending was very surprising. There's some interesting things with Colleen Wing in this issue that I do wonder if that will carry forward into some other books. But it's this. The whole issue is this right here, just Hulk and Thanos going at each other, and it's really cool. And this also contains the next part of the storyline featuring the return of Phil Coulson. He and Nick Fury go up against Nighthawk, which is really cool. So I'm really interested to see where all that goes. But yeah, just a really fun, action-packed issue of Hulk slugging it out with Thanos. Like I said, you could read this on its own if you just want a cool Hulk story, but you haven't been reading Infinity Watch. Pick this up because it doesn't really, you don't really need to know too much about anything else that's going on. So there's our A cover right there. And then we have this 1 in 10 Silva design variant featuring, that's your character,
World Mind.
World Mind. Yeah, that's your character right there. Yeah, so it's really good. I was very surprised with how good this was.
Well, one, I wasn't surprised at how good it is because I knew it would be, but I still loved it. This is I Lie Popeye #1. So this follows up from the free comic book day I Lie Popeye special when we did our show, talked about this one, raved about it because this is Popeye meets Dragon Ball, meets One Piece, meets all the kind of shonen manga,
Yeah.
but with Popeye and friends
Yeah.
in it. It's full color, everything. This is by Marcus Williams, who does the art and the writing, and just nails it. So, one thing I will say, if you read that free comic book day, this contains that whole part. So, the whole story about the different characters, uh, talking about how Popeye lost his eye, and they all have differing stories, and they won't let Popeye get a word in edgewise
Yeah,
about what
that was
happened.
great.
But during those stories are big fights, and they're doing stuff like, a character powers up and like punches the ground in a big crater, or they get punched and through a mountain or a truck and explodes. But this one, of course, continues on from there, where the previous one ended was Popeye doing a huge like rev up punch up against this big like water celestial character. and it continues from there. You get great stuff in here during that fight scene that are classic anime where the punches are so fast you just see the ripples
Yeah.
on the characters. Or Popeye goes back to punch, but on his arm, in his skin, is like the shape of rockets, so you know it's going to be a big punch. Um, One of the other things I really loved was a character basically says like, you don't even understand what eating spinach does to you, but I understand it. It goes through this whole explanation of, if you eat a large can of spinach, that means you get 3 special moves. Um, but if you eat a small one, you get one. And I know because of how many you've moved that you are about
Yeah.
out. And it's just like all of this.
That is so stereotypically shown in with all these
Yeah.
like arbitrary rules and stuff. It's
And it's so cool, and it gives a whole graph. It's like it shows the outline of Popeye, and there's like 3 meters,
yeah.
and it's like, oh, you're down, and you're out in 3, 2, 1, and then his muscles like get smaller. And so it is so cool, and it just has huge over the top fights. And at the end, we do learn kind of a bit more about the character that he was fighting through the Free Comic Book Day book and this one, and some shadowy characters that he may be facing up against in future issues. This is so good. I hope everyone tries this out, especially if you like manga and the over the top shonen action, because that is what this is, and does it so well. So that is our A cover by your interior artist. That's what the interior looks like. That's Marcus Williams. We've got some great variants for it. This is the Samariva variant. That's your who's going to be doing your DC multiverses
Oh, okay.
book with Bugs Bunny and all of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
We've got this one by Kit Wallace, which has a very like Daniel Warren Johnson look to it. I love this one. This one is totally. This is the Calero, totally an homage to like a Dragon Ball manga or just like a Shonen Jump cover. I love that look for Popeye. We've got a great knockout, punch out cover. This is by Richardson. Even all pixel art and everything. We've got this one. This is the Acuna variant, which is really nice. We have, of course, a blank sketch cover to draw your own Popeye. I can and will. And lastly, we have this 1 in 10 variant by Marcus Williams.
Yeah, the Free Comic Book Day was really fun. I haven't read that one yet, but I can't wait.
The relationship between Popeye and Bluto is like Goku and Vegeta.
Yeah.
How they're enemies, but they'll team up to fight a bigger enemy. Yeah. It's so cool.
All right, well, next up, I've got Phases of the Moon Knight #1. This is a 4 or a 5 issue miniseries. I can't remember how many, but each one of these issues is going to tell 2 different stories of 2 different Moon Knights from different time periods. So the first one in this is called The Once and Future Knights, written by Erica Schultz, the artist by Manuel Garcia. And this takes place before Mark Spector's return in Blood Hunt. It takes place right before Blood Hunt, and features the Shroud's brief stint as Moon Knight. And it just shows how brutal he is. He very brutally beats up this gang of D-list villains, enough to where the media dubs it a reign of terror. But that's how the Shroud wants it. Like, he enjoys this kind of negative media coverage because he feels like that's what Moon Knight should be. And there's another story called Crusader. It's written by Benjamin Percy and the artist by Rod Rice. It's set in the year 1200. It's about this farmer named Cassian, and he joins the Crusades, and he travels many different places over the course of 3 years. But he eventually kind of becomes disillusioned with what they're doing because he feels like he's just doing all this fighting for people who live in castles, who are just reaping the benefits of all this. So he leaves his order. But at the time, they're actually in northern Africa, and he comes across this tomb containing Khonshu, who, just like with Mark Spector, he made him an offer to become Moon Knight. And I'll leave it right there, but I will say that he does come into conflict with another Marvel villain who I was very surprised to see, but it makes total sense why they're there. And actually, you might see it on the cover here in a second, but I try not to spoil it. But yeah, just a cool couple short stories of different Moon Knights from different time periods, and each issue is going to be just like that. So there's our A cover right there, and don't look too closely at this, but this is our This is our Brisson cover right there. And then we have this really nice Rod Rice design variant. So that's your Moon Knight from 1200 from the Crusades. And then this is a 1 in 25 Hans variant that we're selling for $19.99.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's got such a cool look that adapts really well
Yeah.
to different
Yeah.
things. Okay, next up for me is Void Rivals, issue number 12. And this is the end of the second story arc for Rivals. So I imagine this will be, volume 2
Yeah.
will end with this issue. This is great, though. I wanted to especially talk about this because this is Kirkman, and Kirkman is so good at the big cliffhangers, all of that. And this has one of the best. So, not only does this have an appearance from a Transformers character, but not a robot, another character that I had to look up, and I was like, oh, they are from Transformers. Uh, this has Salila and Derek parting ways, which is very emotional, and we're gonna see they're each gonna be kind of going on their own quest, but something happens with them together. And the last, I want to say, 3 pages of this set up something that I think is going to be not only big in this, but maybe spread to other Energon universe titles. I could even see it being the first, like, when they all team up for something. Man, it could be that.
You got me really curious about that because, yeah.
It is very mysterious, but is even kind of in the letters page when it starts. They bring it up of like, what's up with that type thing. So I have my theories, but I don't know if I'm right about them because it's a little. I can't quite pinpoint down what this is going to be, but you'll have to read to find out. And I love this because even at the end of issue 12, it's getting more and more exciting.
Yeah.
So keep reading Void Rivals, if anything, or if you haven't read it, pick it up. Volume 1's out. I'm guessing Volume 2 will be out very soon, and you'll be able to pick up with Volume 3 when that starts. I don't think they're taking any kind of like extended break or whatever. It's just the end of Volume 2, and it is a doozy. So that is your A cover for issue 12. We also have this Simone variant. We have a 1 in 10 Arujo variant that we're selling for $5.99. And I love this one. This one has such a cool style. This is the 1 in 25 Stevens variant. We're selling for $14.99.
Well, next for me is Deadpool Team-Up #1. This is written and drawn by Rob Liefeld, and this miniseries, I think it's 4 or 5 issues. This is going to be Rob Liefeld's last work with Marvel forever, according to him. Like he apparently he's done not out of any animosity, just like he says he wants to move on. So this will be the last time he doesn't. This miniseries will be the last time he does any work with Marvel, or presumably any work on Deadpool or anything like that. So in this first issue, Deadpool gets in some hot water with the Nakatori Ninja Clan. They're one letter off from Nakatomi.
I know. That's what I originally read.
Right.
That's what I read.
Yeah. But after a fight with them, Lady Anime, which is another of Rob Liefeld's creations, she appears and says that she can keep that Ninja Clan off of his back if he retrieves a dragon egg for them from an exchange that's going down to the docks. So go down to the docks and steal his dragon egg, give it to this Ninja Clan, and you're square, basically. So he does go to do that, but suddenly, kind of out of nowhere, this giant dragon shows up that's being controlled by a dragon rider named Baron Skagaracker.
It's funny because
It's a weird name.
Because Deadpool, when he tries to say it, calls him something different every time, and it's always something goofy.
I think it's Skagarackacor. Yeah.
Okay.
So Deadpool's fighting him, this dragon rider on this big dragon, and then another dragon lord shows up and helps Deadpool, but we don't really get his name. We just know that he's some kind of dragon lord, I guess. And then it's just chaos from there, right? And there's all this.
The dragon he's riding is another Marvel dragon,
right?
And I didn't really understand how.
Like, where did that come from? Yeah.
Because I mean, it's Dragon Man.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's Dragon Man, like a famous Fantastic Four
Yeah.
character. But he doesn't talk in this or anything. I'm like, but
Right.
Dragon Man is also a robot.
Yeah. Right.
So I didn't really understand that.
It was a
but
little
I was like,
confusing.
oh, but at least I recognize that character.
Yeah, it was a little confusing. And I will say that none of the characters on this cover appear in this issue except for Wolverine. He does show up near the end.
There's 2 characters.
Oh well, yeah, but like it's not so. I was reading this expecting to see like, oh, I wonder how all these characters are going to team up, and we don't quite know yet because I feel like this was a setup. I feel like this issue was a setup issue for the real story that's going to maybe start in issue number 2. But yeah, so Rob Liefeld on Deadpool, that's always a classic, and there's tons of action. Like this whole issue is a big fight scene. That's what Rob Liefeld's really good at. So yeah, if you're a Deadpool fan, Chris Starr's gonna be a part of this story, which I know you're really excited about.
Yep.
So, it's going to be cool to see Deadpool team up with these different characters when they do appear.
I could talk about this book all day. I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah.
It feels like a story that Deadpool isn't usually involved with.
Right.
The dragons in it are nuts. The new character that's like a dragon rider is like, there's a lot of questions around him.
Yeah.
I am all for following this book the whole way because it's just a treat. All your favorite Rob Liefeld isms are in this. Whether you love him or hate him or whatever, it's fun. You know what you're getting. Don't go in this thinking like, oh, I'm gonna pick it apart or whatever. No, like this is 100% Liefeld in all his glory.
Yeah. This is I always talk about like, is this a comic that a kid could pick up and read? And absolutely it is, which is a good thing. That's what we want comics to be. And there's a lot elements of high fantasy in this, which, like you said, Deadpool isn't always like associated with that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. So we have this A cover by Mr. Rob Liefeld right there. We got some cool variants. This is our Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti, nice homage cover there. We have a blank sketch variant. You can draw your own dragon.
Nothing else, but you have to draw dragon.
Just a dragon, yeah. We tried to draw something else, it didn't work. Yeah. There's a movie variant right there. And then we have another Rob Liefeld variant with Deadpool and Wolverine. And then there's this really cool 1 in 25 Sharp variant that we are selling for $19.99. I like the action figures on the table there. It's really cool.
Okay, next up, yes, I'm going to be talking about this. This is Sesame Street #1. This is actually really fun, and I think this is important to talk about because a lot of the books we talk about are for middler to older fans, that kind of thing. But this is a great new book from Oni that is perfect for all ages. And I like Sesame Street. I love the Muppets. They've got a great sense of humor, and this is great. So this is by Joey Esposito and Austin Beckley, and I think each issue of this is going to be done by a different creative team because it kind of teases the next one and the next one. This issue is about Grover. Grover wakes up. He's planning on having a great day, and as he goes throughout Sesame Street, he runs into his friends. You've got all these characters on the cover. They do appear in this. We've got Cookie Monster. We've got Elmo. We've got the Count. We've got Big Bird. You got them all here. You even got the 2-headed monster. And they each have a problem. On Sesame Street, your problems are serious, and we take them serious. But the Count is trying to count all the leaves on a tree, but he can't get to the top ones. Big Bird's trying to build a bookshelf, but he's having trouble following the instructions. I forgot what Elmo's issue is. It's not to do with Rocco.
He's way too cute. He's the pressure of being adorable is mounting on him, I guess.
But as Grover goes through this, he realizes, hey, not only can I help these friends, but they can help each other. Just a hint, how does the Count see the top of a tree? Maybe Big Bird can come in and help him count those top leaves. It's really fun. It's really cute. If you have kids, they'll love this. If you are a fan of Sesame Street, you'll love this. There's a Fantastic Sesame Street episode where they have a Comic-Con, but it's everybody who has a booth is a different letter of the alphabet, and people go and they get like signatures from them.
Nice.
They just write their letter and stuff. They know what's going on, and it works perfect for comics. So check out Sesame Street #1. You're gonna like it. Oh, Oscar the Grouch is in there. We can all relate.
Oh, for sure.
So that is your A cover. I believe that is your interior artist as well. It's very cute. We also have This is the hunting variant. And we have, which I think this is awesome. I know DC did this a few years ago, but I think it's great. It is a coloring page cover. So you can color your own comic cover, which is awesome. And I'd love to see more of these from all the companies.
All right, so I've got a new Venom War tie-in called Venom War Zombiotes #1, and I made a video for my own TikTok earlier about this, and the auto captions changed Zombiotes to Zombie Oats, and I thought that was just
Because that's more believable than zombie
yeah, that's
oats.
right.
Like, give
So
me that breakfast
yeah,
cereal,
right, Zombie
zombie
Oats,
oats.
yeah. So this is written by Kevin Scott, and the art is by Juan Jose Rip. And in this one, so Meridius, and if you're reading the current Venom series, you're probably more well versed on this than I am because I'm not really following that. But Meridius is an evil alternate Eddie Brock from the future. And he has unleashed a swarm of zombiotes in New York City in an effort to remake his symbiote kingdom. Now, that does not happen in this. That maybe happened in the Venom series, but it is recapped. Like the first page is like a little quick little summary, and that's what the summary sheet said. And I was glad that it said that because I said last week I have no idea where these zombiotes are coming from or why they're there. Well, apparently that's why. Um, so they're like zombies in that anybody they bite, they turn into like a mindless, bloodthirsty drone, but they can also reanimate the dead as well. So part of this issue is She-Hulk and Hellcat fighting these zombiotes and everyone that they have possessed or reanimated. And the other part is the Shocker and Speed Demon, who I love Speed Demon,
Mm-hmm.
and Overdrive trying to get away from all the zombiotes. And I won't tell you how either plot goes, but it does seem like that both groups are eventually going to come together and try to have to work their way out of the situation. There are some brutal images in this book to the point I text you one. I was
Yeah.
like, I feel like maybe this should be a red band book. So there's
Well,
some
because that rule, like, if you're doing it to a zombie, it shouldn't matter.
right.
But they push that limit quite a bit.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But it's still really cool. It's a lot of fun. It's cool seeing She-Hulk, Hellcat, the Shocker, and Speed Demon, and Overdrive too. But he's not ever really around too much. But yeah, just a cool other little tie-in. I believe this is going to be a 3-issue tie-in maybe
I think
to
most of
Venom
them
War.
are.
Yeah, and but yeah, that is our only cover right there too. But that's all the cover you need with that
That
glorious
says it
face.
all.
Yep.
Next up for me, which is another glorious face,
Hmm.
another weird one,
Oh yeah.
is Spider-Gwen Ghost-Spider #4. And I really like this series. This is probably one of my favorite runs of Ghost Spider so far because I feel like it, especially that it's tied a little bit more in with the 616 universe, it grounds it a little bit more
Mhm.
and more familiar characters. But in this one, of course, Gwen is not supposed to be. She's not supposed to basically poke her head out of the hole while she's in the 616 universe because of who sent her there.
And she has greatly failed at not
Every
poking her head
time,
out of the
yeah.
hole. Yeah.
They're like, don't put on the costume. You're going by a different name. All of that. That is not working. And they were like, especially don't reveal yourself to the other spider people in the
Right.
city. Well, that's
She
not.
blew that in the first issue.
That was
Yeah.
blown in the first issue. And in this one, if you remember in the last issue, she showed off a new power that she didn't even know she had and expelled like blue energy. This picks up right after that as she wakes up in her apartment with Silk, and Silk is like, "You want to explain what just happened?" And Gwen's like, "I don't know what just happened, but I'm gonna figure it out." And Silk's like, "Nope. One, you're not telling us why you're here, and also you're kind of a liability out there right now if this is a thing that you can do. So you need to lay low." And of course, that's not going to work out again. Plus, we've got the stuff going on with Chameleon trying to frame Gwen. But Chameleon was there when that blast went off, and it's affected him too in a way where maybe he can't control his
Oh.
shape shifting abilities. It's really interesting. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this with Gwen, even some action where she's not in costume, but she has to save some people, which I always like when like Peter Parker has to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's cool.
I just really like this. I really like this series. This first storyline is really interesting. I hope that this power that she has doesn't stay around forever because it's kind of one of those that like doesn't really fit with her mo.
Yeah.
But if it's for the storyline, it's really interesting. So I really like this issue. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. The art's really interesting in this one. At one point, when she wakes up in her apartment, she's wearing a Cyclops was right shirt. back from the like all new, all different,
Yeah.
with it where he was wearing like had the red X
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
I was like, this is kind of fun. It's like when Hawkeye wears shirts and homage to
Yeah.
other characters. So that's really cool. But I really enjoyed it. That is your A cover for that. I really like this cover. This is the Lee variant because, of course, her suit is also kind of a form of a symbiote. And that is it.
All right. Well, I've got Chasm Curse of Kaine #1. This is a new mini series that maybe will be a kind of a redemption arc for Ben Riley.
And also, the
Maybe.
title Chasm Curse of Kaine, I feel like they won it because of the title. There is no Curse of Kaine in this.
That's right. He's not cursed.
He's not cursed.
Yeah.
He's pretty good in this.
So this is written by Steve Fox. The art is by Andrea Briccardo. And at the beginning of this one, Chasm and Hallows Eve, it takes place in Brooklyn, I believe. They save a group of young people from being attacked by this big monster in the subway, which is great, right? They're heroes. Oh, but they rob the kids while they're doing it. And during the fight, there's this weird part where somebody actually kind of peers into Chasm's mind.
Yeah.
And he's
in a very like it's not just like ooh wibbly wobbly. It's like no, it's a pretty illustrative way of doing it.
There's some weird imagery with that. And it's not really clear who it is or why they're doing it, but he does seem to kind of zone out for a minute while Hallows Eve is like fighting all these monsters over here, and she's like, "Hey,
it's vermin, isn't it?"
Well, it kind of looked like it, but I wasn't sure. But
Okay.
yeah, it did look like a bunch of different vermin. But she's like, "Hey Ben, are you gonna help out? You're just like doing nothing over there, right?" So while all that's going on, Kaine is actually tracking down Chasm, and we saw the start of that back in that Web of Spider-Man one shot from a few months ago. And he it's almost like he's a couple steps behind because he does keep coming across all the places that Chasm and Hallows Eve has been, but obviously after they've already left. Well, there's one night when Ben is in bed with Eve, and he wakes up, but he seems like he's possessed, and he disappears. Like he goes out to the city, and he does something, and we see what it is. But when he comes back, hours later, Eve has woken up. She's in a panic, and because he disappeared, but he has no idea where he went or what he did. So there's something there. There's somebody, and the solicitations mentioned that maybe there's somebody else pulling his strings. So it seems like maybe there's something else, somebody else controlling him. He's got to figure out why, but Kaine is also on his tail trying to figure out what they're up to and can he save Ben and that kind of thing. So, just a really cool story with Ben Riley, who we love, and then Kaine. It's cool to see him back. Where is all this going? I don't know, but that's why we have to read it to find out, I guess. So we have this nice A cover right here, and then we have this really cool Martin Coccolo variant, and I love Chasm with the reflection of the Scarlet Spider.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
It's giving me a lot of hope for
I know,
what's
right?
to come out of this.
And then there is an Elena Casagrande Stormbreakers variant.
Yeah, it's a very interesting issue because it's kind of one of those like, what are you playing at? What is the end goal
What is
of
this exactly? Yeah.
But more Kaine, Scarlet Spider, I'm really happy with, and if we get more classic Ben Riley later, I'll be very happy with that as well. Okay, next up for me is our final issue of Gotham City Sirens, and this was great. So, as I was reading this, I was trying to think about this series as a whole. It was a weekly series, and I feel like maybe some people will be like, why did this matter or whatever? But when you read it, this is just fun. This is, it doesn't have like a big to be continued or whatever. This is a fun, action packed. Every issue has had a ton of action in it. The story is pretty wacky, but in a really fun way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, overall, I was like, I really like this because it felt like, not that I didn't have to pay attention to it, but I could just enjoy the ride and not be worried about the technicalities of what's going on.
Yeah, and not every story has to be some big universe-shattering event. Sometimes you just want a fun story.
Yeah, and that makes me feel like this is like a old like episode of or a 2-episode cartoon thing. So in this, we've got the character that showed up in the last one, Dumb Bunny, which is part of White Rabbit that split off as she can do, but is like a big hulking bunny, which is funny because there is another DC character named Dumb Bunny back from the Rejected Heroes or whatever they were called.
Oh, okay.
Thought that was really interesting. But in this, Bunny fights Punchline. We learn where the ability for the Exo Punch energy drink can control people, where that element comes from, and it definitely has the Gotham City Sirens even more on the attack. And Poison Ivy in this creates a version of herself out of plant life that's like an Attack on Titan, which is really, really cool. This just wraps up this storyline. It's a nice bow at the end. Maybe we'll see more of this, maybe we won't, but overall, it's just a fun one and done story that you can get 4 issues of and get a high octane, goofy, fun story.
I'm sure it'll get collected in trade. That'll be a really fun trade to have.
Exactly. It'll be a one, like, here, read this. Yep. There's a lot of elements to this going on. I feel like they touted this as being a little bit more mature than it ended up being. They're kind of being like, oh, this is saucy or over the top violent or anything. It's not that. It's just fun. It reminds you of a Harley Quinn and Friends book in the best way. So this is our final issue and another great Terry Dodson cover. We've got this Lee variant with Punchline. If anything, it sets Punchline up as a better villain without being attached to Joker.
Yeah,
she's good on her own. This is the Forbes variant. We have a Gilliam March variant, the last of our connecting. And we have a 1 in 25 cons variant that we're selling for $19.99.
All right, well, I've got X-Force number 2. And this one's written by Jeffrey Thorne. The art is by Marcus Toad, just like the last one. And in this one, Forge's disaster predicting device known as the Analog leads them to another potential world-ending event. But this one's in Wakanda. And when they get there, they find that someone there has used this ancient magical drum to roll back time by 8 millennia. That seems bad. So this has a negative effect on Rachel and Betsy and Surge and Tank, leaving only Sage and Forge to figure out what's going on and how to save the day, how to fix everything. And I won't spoil how they do it or even if they do that, but it was really cool to see them come up with like a mathematical, scientific solution to a magical problem, which is really neat. And you know, we're talking about covers. This doesn't quite happen in this issue. You know, Black Panther, like that's not quite what happens in this, but it's still really cool to see them, you know, like take on science-based characters take on magic-based problems. That was really cool.
Would you say it's the first appearance of a Black Panther or someone who claims that they're Black Panther?
I think so, but how impactful
if we'll ever see this character again, I don't know. I'm not sure. But I thought it was cool to see maybe what Wakanda was like, you know, generations before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even how they were advanced back in the day.
Yeah, so I didn't quite love this one as much as the first one, but I still really like the concept of this book. These one and done stories where they have to travel to a different place and take on these singular, like, world ending missions, things like that. And I really like the concept. This one was a little bit, you know, I'm more of a science guy than a magic guy anyway. So, but yeah, still a really cool concept for
sure. And this one does set up the next issue, which seems crazy.
Yes, absolutely. So there's our A cover right there. And we have this Clayton Crane variant as well. Clayton Crane on an X-Force cover. That's pretty neat.
Next up, I've got Amazing Spider-Man number 56, but this is oversized because it is Legacy number 950. So we are post the Spider-Goblin story, all this stuff with Norman Osborn, and getting back to kind of what the series has been mostly for the kind of the majority of it, which is about Tombstone and his kid or his son or his daughter and all the kind of crime things. This is kind of more back to gang war feel.
Yeah, back to gang war, or even back to the beginning of this series so far, because you got some Joe Robertson stuff in there. You've got shoot, I can't remember his daughter's name, but Janet, is it Janice?
It's Beetle.
Yeah. Her, you know, Peter and Spider-Man and Tombstone and everything that they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of back to that kind of idea, as it almost also feels like it's. I know we're leading into the final story arc of Amazing Spider-Man with Zeb Wells writing, but it also kind of
Well,
feels
Zeb Wells' final story arc in Amazing Spider-Man,
yeah,
because it's still
yeah,
going to continue after that. But
right,
yeah,
his final story
yeah.
arc in it. But I do feel like this does cap off a little bit of the previous Tombstone stories with kind of, you know, bringing some justice,
Yeah.
we'll say, to what's been going on. But this does have some great guest appearances, especially I'll just say that She-Hulk is in this,
Yep.
and that's the most delightful part of this whole book is the stuff with She-Hulk because this is a oversized anniversary. There are some backup stories. One of them is tied in kind of with the main story, but it's showing kind of She-Hulk's side of this. And then there is also it's dumb to say a Spider-Man story, but
Well, there's a story with Paul.
yeah, yeah, there's a story with Paul. And there's a more kind of cartoony story
Yeah.
in it. It's kind of your plethora of other stories in the end of it as well. But this is setting up Zeb Wells' final story arc before who is it taking over? It's
Joe Kelly or is it Joe Casey?
I
I
can
don't
never
remember.
remember. But before that story arc starts
Yeah.
with like the 8 deaths of Spider-Man
Yeah.
and all of that. But
I think that starts with issue 61.
is that October?
Maybe.
Feels like everything
Yeah.
starts in October.
Right. October's huge this year.
So this is your A cover with Ramita Jr., who does the interior art on the main story. We also have this really nice Villalobos variant. I love that. Great, great Spider-Man there. And then we also have this 1 in 25 Albuquerque variant that we're selling for $14.99.
All right, well, I've got Nice House by the Sea, #2. And I'll be honest, I didn't quite understand this issue because we spend the whole issue with the characters from Nice House on the Lake. And this issue kind of seems to maybe run parallel with the events of issue #1, where we did meet a whole cast of new characters. But we know that the characters from Nice House on the Lake are still around. So I feel like this runs parallel to #1. I was a little bit confused though, but what I did like is there's someone in the group who ordered a dog because they can request
Yeah.
things and they just show up, right? Well, somebody requested a dog, even though they weren't sure if they could do that or if they should do that. But somebody did. We don't know who, and a dog shows up, and the dog was great. The dog was my favorite part of the issue because they're like, "Oh no, we can't do this," but then the dog is like super sweet. And they're like, "All right, maybe." But that leaves them wondering, like, what are the limits of the things that they can request? They did say they tried to request another person once, and that didn't happen. So they're trying to figure that out. And
They
there
should
is,
request a robot butler.
ooh, that'd be cool. And there is something weird that happens at the end, which I kind of feel like ties into the other group from the first issue. So we'll have to wait and see how it all comes together. You know, James Tynion writes stuff sometimes where not everything is clear right at the beginning. You have to read to find out where all this is going. But you know, the next issue is out, so if you've been reading that, definitely don't miss it. And yeah, I've got that's our A cover. I got a couple variants here.
Is this the one that has the variant of the dog on the beach?
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah, so this is our Javier Fernandez and Dave McCaig variant right there. And then yeah. So this is the Joshua Hickson variant. There's the dog just hanging out on the beach. The dog's great. I love the dog in this.
Okay, next up, I've got Ultimate X-Men #6. So this is, I guess, the end of our first story arc. It kind of
I think so.
ties up a little bit of, at least the characters come together the most they have so far and create. I don't know if I would say it's a team, but they all are proactive in a fight because we learn more about this universe's version of Shadow King. We knew a little bit about him and the Homo Superiors and all of that we got in a previous issue, but they do face off against him. And I think we kind of just learned that this version of Shadow King is just kind of obsessed with armor. He's kind of just a stalker
A
almost
little
of
bit.
armor. But so it feels like maybe we've wrapped up for now some of the Shadow King stuff. I'll be interested to see what's the story going after this. And it maybe another character is teased at the very end, but they're so in the shadow and kind of hard to tell what's going on that it's up for interpretation about who it is or what it is or whatever. But if you've been enjoying this, it's still the same. It's um very different than kind of a American comic version of a story like this, characters don't quite get the big introduction that they would in another book. Because there's a lot of characters. This universe's version of Cyclops, she's in this, but this is kind of the first time she talks, and she's just kind of part of the group
She's just there, yeah.
automatically. So I'll be interested to see maybe after this issue if we get a little bit more insular, or like learn a little bit more about the characters that are in this group, because we don't really know too much about them so far. But wrapping up this one, we've got, of course, a Peach Momoko A cover. We've got this really nice Megan Hetrick variant. Great colors on that one. And we have this Hans variant with, I guess that's your Cyclops-like character, but she does not shoot a blast out of her eye or anything.
Not in this issue, I don't think.
Nope.
Yep. All right, so I've got some Absolute Power tie-ins. This is Absolute Power Origins #2. Now, it seems like there's been a bit of a time jump between the end of the first issue and the start of this one, because in this issue, Amanda Waller is already in a position of power with the government, and she actually sends out the very first Task Force X squad on a mission to Russia. This is before the original, or I don't want to say the original, but like the 1980s, the John Ostrander's. This is before that. And it doesn't go, their mission doesn't go the way that it should, but she still touts it as a success to the president, and he still allows her to continue the Task Force X program. I will say this issue is actually pretty dialogue heavy, but it serves to show us that Amanda Waller has a very sort of twisted view on justice. So, nice, giving us more inner workings, a peek inside her head and how she operates and that kind of thing. So we have our A cover right there, and then we have this cool.
It's kind of the team that's in that one.
Yeah, this Manhanini variant right there.
Classic Captain Boomerang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next up for me, I've got Barbaric versus Deathstalker #1. This is a one-shot, and I got a chance to flip through this. I did not get a chance to read it, but it looks really fun. I really like the Barbaric universe, and Deathstalker, the book that is co-done by Slash from Guns N' Roses, and all of that is really cool. And it's bringing those two barbarian type characters together, I believe by the artist from Barbaric. And it's just a one and done story. It looks really fun. There's a ton of action, violence, all the kind of stuff you expect from this universe. So I can't wait to read it. It feels a little bit oversized, which is great. But that is your A cover for that. And we also want to show it because it's got this great variant cover.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Gooden variant, of course, an homage to the issue after Wolverine's first appearance.
And looking at that cover, I would say that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one right there, yeah.
But very cool homage there.
Well, I've got Absolute Power Task Force 7 #5, and this is written by Alex Pagnadel, and the art is by Pete Woods. And this issue, because each issue has been focusing on a different Amazo robot, this one focuses on Velocity, which is the Flash Amazo. Now, in this, it's chasing Barry, because Barry's one of the only heroes who still has his powers during this event. It's chasing him around, trying to absorb his powers, but Barry actually traps it in the Speed Force. And while it's in the Speed Force, it sees some of Barry's memories. And because of that, it kind of develops this weird obsession with Barry because it wants to learn from him. It wants to know how he can do some of this stuff and all that kind of thing. I won't say, whether he catches him or not, because that's the whole point of the issue. But we also see some more of Steve Trevor sneaking around Gamora Island. And he witnesses some other characters who join up with Amanda Waller that I feel like might be pretty important to the main story.
It'd be hard to introduce them just in kind of the backup of this, and it not affect the main story, because it's like some pretty heavy-hitting characters.
Yeah, for sure. So I was like, wait a minute, that seems kind of important. I do wonder if we're going to see them. It would be weird if we just don't see them again. So more to come on that, I guess. But yeah, just the next part. This is going to be a 7-issue series, so we have 2 more after this. So there's our A cover right there. We have this Salvador Roca variant with Velocity. Here's our next John Timms connecting variant. And then, of course, we've had these for all of them. This Stephen Platt variant, the mugshot variant. And then my favorite, the Dan Mora foil variant. It looks really cool.
There's also something interesting about Velocity where when he runs, he doesn't have the like Speed Force buffer that the Flashes do. So when he runs, it just creates chaos and just destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it doesn't have that kind of like friction resistance or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any more?
Nope.
Oh, well, just real quick then, we've got Green Arrow number 15, which is another Absolute Power tie-in. And this whole issue is the Arrow family battling Amanda Waller's forces, but up in the sky. They're all on this big, like, airplane-looking thing. They were on a mission to find Professor Ivo to convince him to help them figure out how to shut down Amanda Waller's Amazo robots. But Waller's forces get to Ivo first, so then they go on this rescue mission to try to save him. But maybe he doesn't want to go with him, right? Because Ivo's not a great guy anyway. So maybe he doesn't want to go with them. Yeah, so I mean, good action in this, good artwork, and it's really just fun to see the entire Arrow family is in this, except for the entire Arrow family is in this, and that's all I'll say about that. And it's just cool to see them all working together. Up in the sky, like they're pretty much out of their element, right? Because they don't have powers, but they're up against some powerful foes. We'll say that. But and this is the only cover we have right there.
Is that it for you?
That's it for me.
Awesome. Well, it's a big week. Plus, there's even more stuff that came out that we didn't talk about. So head on over to infinityflux.net. Right now, you can see everything that came out. We just don't have all day and all the time in the world to read every single thing.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to mention that too. Like, there are some other cool, non-Big Two books, or some cool Image books. We've got Hello Darkness #2.
There's a couple of distillery books.
Yeah.
There's Life and our second issue of White Boat.
Yeah.
That we just ran out of time to read.
Yeah, well, we had a little snafu with shipments too.
Yeah.
So some of these we just did not get the chance to read. So don't think we're ignoring those, because those are some great books too. It wasn't in the cards to read them for us this time.
Yep. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for our video coming up on Wednesday, where we're going over books that you can pre-order by the weekend. I feel like we're teasing early ordering, but for October's books, we're getting so close to some of the biggest books of the year.
Yeah.
So you don't want to miss out on those when we get to them. I'm not sure when that's going to start.
Mm-hmm.
Probably closer to September.
Yeah.
But it's going to be great. And check out our new video that we just launched, the Infinity Flux Letters page. It's under the Live tab or on our homepage of our YouTube channel, that we answer your questions. We talk back and forth with people live, and we'll be doing that every other week. So next week, we'll be doing episode number 3.
Yeah, there's not one this week, but next week for sure.
Yeah, so much great stuff coming out. And like I said earlier, head over to infinityflux.net for all the goodness. But until next time, see ya.